Hey there, MiniWarGamers. Owen here from MiniWarGaming, bringing you another How to Play Warhammer Fantasy video. This time we're going to be going over monsters and their effects on infantry. Here we have the War Hydra. Now this is basically the Dark Elf Big Beastie, coming in with high stat line, not the greatest initiative, but a high toughness compared to most of the elves, or all of the elves for that matter. A low points cost and a large number of attacks. This is an amazing critter. Definitely my favorite that I've seen out of the other monsters that I've had to go up against. But in this case, it's just an example. We're going to be using the Hydra as we're going to be using the Hydra to show what a monster can do to a squad of infantry. And here we have the infantry that are going to go up against the Hydra in this round. Hydras, like all other creatures in Warhammer, or all other units for that matter, except for a few that have random movement, but we'll deal with that later, do have to roll the charge. So, like everything else, they roll 2d6 and add their movement. So for this example, the Hydra has a movement of 6, and I roll 2 dice, and gets 8, total of 14, and you can move 14 inches to charge those high elves, dark elves. So here we have the Hydra charged in this unit of spearmen. Now, normally the Hydra would have 2 handlers with him, the Beastmasters that have their own whips and attacks, but any attacks directed at the Hydra automatically hit the Hydra, and for now we're just going to deal with the monster itself. So the Beastmasters, they attack like any other infantry, only all the attacks that go against them go against the Hydra. So we're just going to skip them and go right to the Hydra. Starting with that, it goes in initiative order. So in this case, the Dark Elves with initiative of 5, and the Hydra with initiative of 2. Now the Dark Elves, of course, are going to go first. So with the initiative of 5, the Dark Elves are going to go first. You take a look at the unit now, and you can see here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then a second rank and a third rank. The Hydra charge them, and they have spears. So they get an additional rank, which puts them at the third rank, that all get to attack. So that's a total of 15 attacks against the Hydra there. And so the Dark Elves attack. Now the weapon skill of the Dark Elf is 4, as is the weapon skill of the Hydra. So in this case, we need to roll a 4 or more in order for the Hydra to hit, or for the Dark Elves to hit the Hydra. So as we take a look here, we've got a total of 5 hits. Now, the advantage of the Dark Elves is that they do have Hatred, which gives them the ability on the first round of combat that they can actually re-roll any hits that don't actually hit. So I get to re-roll the remaining 10 hits that didn't hit the first time. So we got another 5. So now we have a total of 10 hits. Now the Dark Elves have to wound the Hydra. So in this case, the Dark Elves only have a strength of 3. And the Hydra's got a toughness of 5. So the Dark Elves are going to need to roll 6s on these 10 hits in order to do a single wound to the Hydra. So they attack, and they did actually do 1 wound to the Hydra. With their 1 wound, the Hydra now has to make a save. Because the Dark Elves are only strength 3, they do not have armor piercing, the Hydra gets to make it at its regular armor save. Now the Hydra has a scaly skin save of 4+. So on a dice, you need to roll 4 more, and it will not be wounded. I did. Also, if, for example, I had not made that save, the Hydra then gets to make a regeneration save, which is also 4+. The only time you're not going to get regeneration is if, for example, they have a flaming attack. And it will obviously be described, it'll explain it, that this creature has flaming attacks, or this model has flaming attacks, or count these attacks as flaming. It'll say something like that. Basically, if you're hitting it with fire, it can't regenerate. Now we go to the other side of the combat. At initiative 2, the Hydra then attacks. The Dark Elves, failing to have done any wounds to the Hydra, they're in quite a bit of trouble. Not that they weren't in trouble already when the critter charged them. The Hydra then has an option here. A lot of the monsters out there, or at least some monsters, have breath weapon attacks, namely dragons. Dragons have breath weapons, and the Hydra does, and they all do different things, and they all have different rules which will be explained. For example, the Dark Elf Dragon, you need to do a leadership check at -3 in order to charge. Or the Hydra, where his breath weapon attacks are strength equal to the number of wounds he has left. What I could do now is the Hydra could get 2d6 breath weapon hits in close combat. So while outside of combat, it's a flamethrower template, much like the ones in 40K, a template such as this. In close combat, you don't have that option. In close combat, you can choose to get 2d6 additional attacks. Now, breath weapons are once per game options. So when you're gonna use it, that's the only time you're gonna get to use it. So make sure you use it at a good time. For this example, the Hydra is going to use it right now. So in addition to its normal attacks, the Hydra then gets 2d6 breath weapon attacks. So in this case, he got 9. So he's got 9 strength 5 hits against these Dark Elves. Now being at strength 5, he now needs to roll strength 5 against toughness 3, which would be 2s. So out of those 9 hits, or out of the 9 hits that he did with his breath weapon, 8 of them wounded. Now Dark Elf, even with the shield, only has an armor save of 5+. Because the attack is 2 points higher than strength 3, so it's strength 5, strength 4, then strength 3, it minuses 2 from their armor save. So they go from having a 5-up save to having no save. And so 3, 6, 8 Dark Elves are slain outright from the very first attack by this Hydra. In addition to those breath weapon attacks, the Hydra is then going to get its regular attacks. Now, Hydra's regular attacks, it has 7 attacks in total. Now, it's also weapon skill 4, so it's going to need 4s to hit these elves. But like the elves, the Hydra also has the Eternal Hatred special rule, which lets it reroll on the first round. So it missed with most, only 2 hit, but it gets to reroll. And there we go. So up to a total of 5 hits for the Hydra. Now it is strength 5 as well, and it needs 2s to wound. So I got 3. So 3 more elves are squished. Now if that wasn't enough, the Hydra then gets to make a Thunder Stomp attack. Now there's 2 kinds of attacks like this. There's a stomp attack that monsters, infantry, or some monsters get, which essentially at the very end of combat, you get 1 hit at your strength. The monsters, or large monsters anyway, get Thunder Stomp, which is D6 hits at their strength at the end of combat. So the Hydra gets D6 more hits against these elves. So we got 4 more. So strength 5, toughness 4 on 4 dice, you need 2s, and he squishes 3 more elves. So as you can see, not going too well for the elves. They've taken a total of 14 casualties from the charge on this Hydra, and did no wounds in return. This is the kind of power that monsters have. If they get into combat against a squishy infantry unit like this, they are going to just eat it. The big thing I noticed to watch out for with your monsters is, of course, cannons, which you probably saw in the last battle report that I had, or at least the battle report against chems or dwarves, that a cannon shot can absolutely devastate your monster. Doing up to D6 wounds, they will just tear away like 1 hit and you've lost nearly your entire monster in that 1 shot. And against Hydras, whose breath weapon is dependent on how tough they are or how many wounds they have left, it's twice as bad. Another thing to watch out for are going to be in the Hydra's case, anything that can do flaming attacks or that can get around the special ability of your monster. So if they have something that, for example, there's a spear in the Dark Elf Codex that minuses 3 from a scaly skin save. And because the Hydra having scaly skin is what gives it its armor save, you'd lose your armor save right then and there when you get hit by this. So you're going to want to watch out for that. Now magic items, yes, you can't really guess where they're going to be, so that's not something you can defend against, but usually running a monster at a character, 50-50, it's going to work out. Depends on the character, depends on the monster. I would throw a Hydra at pretty much anything I can come across, and that's because Hydras are great. That being said, Dreadlords are great. Anyway, for this example, the Hydra obviously won combat. It killed 14 of those elves, and if this were to continue, it would continue stomping and eating these elves. And while it's possible that an infantry unit will win against a monster, not likely, especially with these elves. If you had something that was stronger, maybe Chaos Warriors or elves with halberds or something with a great weapon, you'd be better off because you at least have the high strength to actually be able to wound it. But low strength, cheap units thrown against monsters are just going to either slow them down by soaking up all the hits and dying every turn, or just get destroyed, which I've seen happen. I've seen both of those happen. Elite units, elite infantry, or cavalry getting the charge off against a monster is an easy way to take one down because they do not stand up to it very well. But the best, most guaranteed way of winning these combats or beating those monsters are ranged weapons. Cannons, ballistas, catapults if everything falls apart, or just massive amounts of crossbows or bows or guns or whatever your army happens to use. Anyway, that is essentially an overview of the War Hydra and monsters in general and what happens when you charge. That is essentially an overview of monsters charging. It's very similar, very simple, just like when an infantry or cavalry or any other unit charges into combat, only it has a few little abilities. Thunderstomp, phenomenal, and the possibility of a breath weapon. Now, of course, other monsters have other abilities like the Terrorgeist and its Scream, and can't think of other ones, but this is a basic of monsters charge in, lots of attacks, easy to squish units, and the possibility of a breath weapon. So I hope this will help you out, help you with Warhammer Fantasy. MiniWarGaming Owen. Now remember, if you do want to challenge or play against somebody from MiniWarGaming, you go to miniwargaming.com/challenge, send the email in, fill out the form, challenge anybody who works here, and we'll play you a game of whatever, any MiniWarGaming, any mini war game. Anyway, MiniWarGaming Owen, happy wargaming.